Thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone. My name is Cecilia Gonzalez. I am part of the adaptation team of the Global Diet Quality Project. I'm here with my colleagues, Chris Bogliano and Christina Sokurenko and Anna Herforth, who is our team leader and principal investigator. So this session today, we expect it to be interactive. So always be active in the chat, and when there are opportunities for group activities, we welcome all your participation. Today's webinar is about understanding the diet quality questionnaire, which is good to assess diet patterns and diet quality, and also to see and monitor changes of diet over time. We will be practicing administering the DQQ in different countries. We will also learn to use the indicator calculator on the website and have a discussion about the diet quality questionnaire and answer any of your questions. So to get started, we would love to know who is in the room. So if you can share in the chat, your name, your affiliation, where you are joining us from, we would love to see. So I will pass it to my colleague, Chris. And yeah, we can get started with the activities. And feel free to keep sharing where you're from.
Excellent. Thank you, Cecilia. If we could show the Mentimeter poll, that would be great. Thank you, Christina. All right, if everyone could please go to the Mentimeter poll that's listed on the slide. You can either use your phone and scan the QR code, or go to menti.com and just type in that simple code, the 2562263. Excellent. So the first question is, yesterday, did you have any fruits that are dark yellow or orange inside, like ripe mango or ripe papaya? We have a bias sample, I bet, because many of you are very nutrition focused. Okay, great. So we have about 18 people that said yes and 20 that said no. So if we could go to the next slide, and there'll be a word cloud that's generated to see. Oh, actually, please enter which fruits you ate that are dark yellow or orange inside, like ripe mango or papaya. And we'll see what types of fruits folks ate yesterday. Apricot, mango, peaches, nectarine, banana, clementines, watermelon. Okay, excellent. So we asked this open-ended, or this very open-ended question, because this is sometimes how food frequency questionnaires have traditionally been asked, putting the cognitive burden on the user to and the participant to figure out which fruits are dark yellow or orange inside, and then the participant has to think through everything, the Rolodex of fruits, and determine. And so it's interesting to see here that even among nutrition professionals, this question is really probing for vitamin A rich fruits. And certain fruits that have been listed here in this word cloud are actually not vitamin A rich. So we have clementines, which are not. Watermelon, it's really nutritious, but not high in vitamin A. Nectarines, similarly. Even peaches, which the MDDW previously classified as vitamin A rich, but after further analysis realized that it actually doesn't really meet the cutoff. So only certain foods here are vitamin A rich, such as mango and papaya, etc. So very interesting. So now we're going to ask another question. This is a question that is from a DQQ country, and you'll see that it's actually close-ended now. And so this question has been adapted to the specific country, and it's much more easy cognitively for the participant to understand. They don't have to go through the Rolodex of of fruits that may or may not fit that question. It's as simple as, did you have any of these 4 fruits yesterday? So let's see how folks answer now. Okay, see how the same sample of people voting, but we can see now that actually many fewer people have had a vitamin A rich fruit yesterday because it is not an open-ended question, it's a closed-ended question. Great, so let's do one more. Yesterday, did you have any dark green leafy vegetables such as spinach or broccoli? And again, this is an open-ended question. So we have around 24 participants say yes and 20 say no. Okay, so let's see what dark green leafy vegetables you all ate yesterday. If you could just type those in, again, similarly to the first question. Spinach, broccoli, okay, great. Excellent. Pumpkin leaves, kale. Does cucumber count? Cucumber actually fits into other vegetables. So in this case, it actually does not count. Asparagus, similarly. But a lot of these do. So Swiss chard, yes. Pumpkin leaves, definitely. Collard greens, absolutely. So there are certain foods that have entered this this word cloud that are actually considered as condiments by the DQQ because they're not usually and typically consumed in a full serving size, such as parsley or basil. They are dark green leafies, but usually used in smaller amounts than 15 grams per serve. But there are a lot of correct answers too. We have kale, spinach, broccoli, yeah, collard greens, pumpkin leaves. So you can see how this is confusing because it's open-ended, and it puts that burden on the participant to figure out what really fits in this category. So let's try this question again that is close-ended. This is a question extracted from the diet quality questionnaire. Yesterday, did you have any spinach, pumpkin leaves, amaranth leaves, cowpea leaves, or cassava leaves? And again, this question would look very different in every country that it's implemented in because this each tool is adapted to show only the sentinel foods, the most commonly consumed foods in each country. So I know we have a very global audience here, so this question might not be as applicable to you depending on where you are in the world. But you can get the idea that closed-ended questions are more precise and require less cognitive load for the participant. So now we have 19 folks say yes and 33 say no. Excellent, that was really exciting. I will now pass it over to Anna, who will introduce the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, team. It's great to see everyone here today. I would like to proceed by giving an overview of the diet quality questionnaire before we're going to have some activities in this learning lab for using the diet quality questionnaire and producing indicators of diet quality from the data that you collect yourselves. So my name is Anna Herforth. I am the principal investigator of the Global Diet Quality Project based at the Harvard School of Public Health here in Boston, also affiliated with Wageningen University and Research. And so here I'd like to give an overview of how the diet quality questionnaire enables diet quality monitoring, really globally and in countries, but also in certain applications in research when you're looking at populations. And the motivation behind this whole area of work is really that diet has been the largest data gap in public health. It's consistently ranked as really at the top of risk factors in the global burden of disease in general, not just different forms of malnutrition. An estimated half of the planet suffers from malnutrition in at least one form, whether that be undernutrition, micronutrient deficiencies, or diet-related non-communicable diseases. And so poor diets are estimated to cost $3.5 trillion per year globally. But despite this huge importance of diets in nutrition and public health, most countries in the world have had no recent nationally representative dietary intake surveys. And that's because collecting dietary data typically has required very high costs, time, expertise, and all of that high cost, time, and expertise applies to both data collection and data analysis, which often takes years to do before the data can be used for application in the country. But without this data, it's really difficult to describe the problem of what is happening with diets, how are they changing, and also to inform solutions and advocate for solutions to improve diets. It's quite amazing that until now, no effort has ever collected diet quality data comparably across countries globally. You know, it's what we're looking at here is really actually an excellent effort by WHO and FAO. It's the GIFT platform in this visual, the global individual consumption on food tool. I always forget the acronym, but it's a tool that collects diet data across countries that has been made publicly available, which is an excellent effort to try to increase access to diet data that has been collected in different countries, because basic, current data about what people eat has been difficult to access as well. It may be collected, but then nobody can actually see it or use it. But, because there are large basic data gaps in the number of countries that have actually collected data, and then the additional effort to get that data harmonized and shared publicly, it still shows a very small number of countries so far that have displayed national survey data. So far, there are only 8 countries, I believe, available, of which 3 are surveys done within the last 10 years. So while this is an excellent effort to compile available information that has been collected across countries, it really is not a monitoring system for diets because there's just huge gaps, and it's not a timely system for making the information immediately available for use to see what's happening in diets now, not 15 or 20 years ago. So in order to complement some of these existing efforts on quantitative diet data and to really make it possible to get current comparable data across countries, that's the aim of the Global Diet Quality Project, to enable diet quality monitoring globally with tools and data. It's a collaboration between Gallup, Harvard, and the Department of Global Health and Population, where I sit, and GAIN, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. And we have collaboration from many people and institutions around the world. In particular, I want to highlight our collaboration with Wageningen that's been behind a lot of the validation work and a lot of people involved in studies, and the adaptations of each diet quality questionnaire that Chris mentioned that have been done via a lot of interviews and participation around the world. So here is what the diet quality questionnaire looks like. This is the entire questionnaire. It's very short. It contains yes or no questions about foods consumed in the previous day, similar to what you heard Chris read out in the Menti poll earlier with those closed-ended questions. Those questions cover 29 universal food groups covered across countries, but the items in the question are country adapted, and they are adapted to the most common foods in each food group in each country. The questions are read aloud the same way each time in person or by phone, and the whole questionnaire takes about 5 minutes to administer. And this was developed as a tool to rapidly assess diet quality at population level, and really to democratize data collection for diets, because this does not require a PhD in nutrition to do. It only requires any survey research enumerator who can simply read the introduction and read the questions aloud, not requiring the enumerator to have to classify foods and not requiring the participant to classify foods either. So really reducing the burden because we've put all of the classification work and the adaptation upfront built into the tool. These are the food groups that are covered, the 29 food groups here. You can see them sort of subdivided into some broad groups. There's a bunch of plant foods, diversity of plant foods, many of which are, or really all of which are important for nutrition in various ways, including micronutrient adequacy, as well as protection of health against non-communicable diseases. There's also a diversity of animal source foods, which are disaggregated in a way that allows greater analysis of how the consumption of these foods may relate to NCDs, as well as climate impact. For example, separating out ruminant red meat from non-ruminant, that's related to differences in climate impact, separating out processed meats from other forms of meat, because that's related to NCD risk. And of course, animal source foods also are there on the positive side for providing micronutrient adequacy. And then we have another category of foods to limit, which contain a lot of the ultra-processed foods that are high in added sugars and salt, often fat and saturated fat, which tend to be correlated with the risk factors for NCDs. And so because of those aspects of the food groups, we can actually use food groups to create several different indicators that cover various aspects of diet quality. So we don't have one single indicator of diet quality because there are many aspects of diet quality. Looking at the very bottom of the slide, we can see we have the aspect of protection of health against NCDs as an aspect of diet quality, adequate diversity of diets that are aligned with dietary guidelines, micronutrient adequacy, and that those all come from the sort of normative guidance. So we have a set of healthy diet recommendations from WHO that are formulated because of those aspects of diet are related to protection of health against NCDs. So we have two indicators, NCD protect and NCD risk, which capture those global recommendations of diet factors in the diet that protect against NCDs. In the middle there, we have all five, which is an indicator of whether the 5 food groups that are most commonly recommended across national food-based dietary guidelines, whether those have been consumed. Those same food groups are also used in the indicator of cost and affordability of a healthy diet that's used as a global food insecurity indicator by FAO. And then we have the MDDW, which is the minimum dietary diversity for women. The publication there by FAO is about that indicator, how it's related to micronutrient adequacy for women age 15 to 49. And we can also use those same food groups. There are 10 food groups in that indicator that can be counted across the general population of men and women. So we use the DQQ to measure all people in the general population, men and women. Then we also have country adapted IYCF DQQs for infant and young child feeding indicators. This is for age 6 to 23 months. This questionnaire is aligned with both the WHO and UNICEF IYCF indicators, as well as the adult DQQ. So you can use it to collect data across the life cycle, even within, if it were administered in the same household, using these two questionnaires for the different age groups. And with the IYCF questionnaire, be able to also obtain the standard indicators of breastfeeding, breast milk substitutes, minimum diet diversity for children, and et cetera, around healthy and unhealthy feeding practices. So all of that information comes from, these DQQ adaptations. And the DQQ for age 15 and over has now been used to collect nationally representative data in 56 countries so far. It's been implemented in the Gallup World Poll in 2021 and 2022. And the countries that have been covered so far are those that you see in dark blue. The countries that are being covered right now this year and next year are in the medium blue. So by 2024, the DQQ will have been administered in over 90 countries to collect nationally representative data. I want to highlight this report we put out in October of last year after the first 41 countries. Now it's up to 56. And also, I guess I could highlight here how quickly the data have become available. So looking at these countries in dark blue that have been covered, the data collection actually finished in January of this year. And the results are already there for public use less than 6 months after the data collection finished. So, while the DQQ doesn't have all of the comprehensive quantities of information that you would get from a typical quantitative 24-hour recall survey, it also is almost immediately available rather than having to wait for several years to analyze the data. So, in diet data, there's lots of trade-offs between comprehensiveness and speed and the utility of the data. And so these are really complements of, efforts to collect comprehensive data, provide a lot of information. The DQQ provides an ability to see data quickly and monitor dietary patterns that are meaningful in indicators. And so these indicators are presented in the publication of the first round of data collection, measuring what the world eats. And in more than half of the countries that are covered, by the way, this is the first national diet data in the total population that has ever been collected in many of the countries. And some of the highlights here are the MDDW data that's available that many countries have been interested in tracking. The country-adapted DQQ addresses issues of standardization, as Chris mentioned in the introduction, of standardizing questions so that respondents really can answer them easily, and everybody understands the question in the same way, and also addresses issues of capacity to scale up measurement of this indicator that's been an issue in some countries that have wanted to collect this indicator. And we've also partnered with the Demographic and Health Surveys, DHS, which is also collecting data for this particular indicator so that we're harmonized in the data collection. They're using the adapted questions from that we've produced in the DQQ for the food groups relevant for MDDW. So we have harmonized data collection with DHS. And we can see from the data that in much of sub-Saharan Africa and in India, as well as Afghanistan that recently came out, less than half of women are achieving MDDW, which means they are at high risk of having micronutrient inadequate diets. When we look at the indicator of all five, whether people have consumed all five food groups that are typically recommended in dietary guidelines shown at the bottom of the screen, most people in the world are not consuming diets that contain these five food groups. That means they're not even minimally following dietary guidelines. If they're not consuming the food group at all, they're definitely not consuming the required or recommended amount or proportion of the day's food that's in that food group. So this is an indicator shows there's a lot of work to be done on. Sometimes it's access to all of these diverse food groups, and sometimes it may be behavior changes that are needed to consume more diversity in the diet. If we turn to the indicators related to NCDs, NCD Protect and NCD Risk, we can see here that dietary risk factors for NCDs increase substantially as national income increases. You can see in the graph with the bars, that's data divided by high, upper middle, lower middle, and low income countries. And the light green bar, you can see increases quickly as national income goes up, while the health protective factors shown in dark green increase only slightly with national income. So this is sort of data underlying what was long suspected, that really income growth is a double-edged sword for nutrition. When income increases, do diets get better? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no, because of the risk factors for NCDs. NCD risk as the indicator is also correlated with the percent of the diet in ultra-processed foods that we've worked with the University of Sao Paulo to do those correlations. We can also look at the data by urban and rural locality. As you would expect, in many countries, we see that unhealthy foods are more common in urban areas, shown in the dark blue bars, all of the countries where they were significantly higher in urban compared to rural areas. However, I also want to point your attention to the fact that that's not seen in all countries. In some countries, there's actually not a significant difference between urban and rural in the foods that are correlated with NCD risk. And so this is important information on the spread of ultra-processed foods into even the most rural areas of some countries. And so this was true in several countries in South Asia, where we saw packaged snacks and instant noodles, similar consumption prevalence in several countries across the region. Also soft drinks in many countries in the South Asia region, there were similar percentages consuming in urban and rural. And also, even when we looked at people who reported having enough money for food or not having enough money, there were similar prevalences of consumption of these types of food. And so you can imagine people who report not having enough money for food, if they are consuming ultra-processed foods, that is almost certainly going to be displacing nutrient-rich foods that could have been consumed. So that's important information. We also see gender differences. So one of the advantages of the Gallup World Poll data is that it covers women and men. DHS is collecting important information, but only covers women age 15 to 49, as well as infants and young children. So we have new type of information from the Gallup World Poll data on gender disparities. And we find large disparities in some indicators, one of them being soft drink consumption, which tends to be quite a lot higher in men than in women in many countries. And this also tells us that if we had only collected data in women, we would not have the correct population estimates for the total population, because we would have been missing that information on higher consumption of soft drinks in men. And so that's an overview of the type of data that comes from the DQQ. Another great resource that we're happy to share with you in this learning lab is that you don't have to only look at the data that's been collected. You can actually use the data collection tools, the ones that were implemented in Gallup World Poll. They're all available, and even countries that have not been covered yet. For now, about I think we're up to 119 country-specific adaptations. In all of the countries shown in any shade of blue, there is a country-specific adapted DQQ that you can access and use. And so these are available on the website, dietquality.org. You can find the tools for each country. They're also translated into national languages. Sometimes translation is a real barrier, especially with food words. Google Translate is not great. So we've worked with Gallup, we've worked with a translation agency. Sometimes individuals directly to translate them. And also, if you are using any of these tools in maybe a less common language in the world, and you find any errors in translation, please let us know, because that's one of the things that's very tricky. If we don't speak Hausa, for example, if no one on the team speaks Hausa and we have a translation, we cannot verify if the translation is totally correct. And so please, if you see any problems with translations, let us know, and we will continue to improve the tools so that they are asking the right questions that are intended. We also have the infant and young child feeding DQQs available for most of the countries. And these are, again, harmonized with what DHS is using in their surveys. And also you can play with the interactive maps of the data, which we'll do today, and as well as the indicator calculator. Here's an example of how you'll find the tools. We'll practice this today. So this is an example looking at Ghana. You go to the map and or the list of countries and click on Ghana. You'll see the download resources button, and you can click on that to find the DQQs. There's also a country brief for this particular country, as well as the indicators that have been collected at national scale. Here are the samples available for Ghana in English and TRI and the IYCF DQQ. The DQQ has also undergone a lot of validation work. A lot of it's still in process and hasn't yet gotten through the long kind of publication pipeline, but the website has the publications that are available. This particular one may be of interest, showing the validation of the DQQ against a reference method. Chris was involved in this research, as well as several people at Wageningen who have been working on PhDs and postdocs on this, showing that when we look at the indicators, whether they're measured through data in the DQQ or a quantitative multi-pass 24-hour recall, we have generally similar prevalences of, here we're looking at MDDW, that basically there's some small differences in the prevalence measured between the two tools, but it's generally giving us similar information in the same area, so that this could be used for advocacy and policy discussions. And there were minor differences in food group reporting across the two methods, showing the validity of the DQQ in collecting the data. That publication is available on the website dietquality.org under reports and publications, as well as some others. So to conclude, really the point is enabling diet quality monitoring, that the DQQ does enable a feasible monitoring system. How do we know it's feasible? Because it's been done. We see the data already and we can use the data. It offers insights at very low cost, actually quite far less than 1% the cost of a national quantitative dietary intake survey, requires very little training. As you will see today, you'll learn how to do it. It's ready to use and fully adapted in partnership with many, many key informants around the world. We have talked to almost 900 people around the world, probably including many of you who are here, to adapt these diet quality questionnaires for each country context. And we're really grateful to everybody involved in this global effort. And we'll also practice how the data analysis is simple and rapid. So this tool offers everyone a way to collect diet quality data that are aligned with the multi-topic surveys that are in place. They can be used in other national surveys or surveillance systems. They can be used by the agriculture sector because they don't require so much nutrition expertise. And they can be used in research efforts aiming to collect data on populations, not individuals. It's not a clinical tool for counseling or for individual use, but for population level estimates. It can be used in research efforts as well. So we are really grateful to our donors, who I want to recognize here, we couldn't have done any of this without the financial support, and then for our supporters who have been very instrumental in helping connect us with key informants to adapt the tools, do some of the research, and provide other information that's been supportive. And you see many of the team members here today, but there are other team members who are not joining this lab who are pictured here. It's a full team effort, so I want to recognize them as well. So I will stop there. Thank you for your attention to the overview, and we'll shift over to the activity.
All right, so in just a moment, Alex is going to help break us into a few groups to tackle the activity. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to post the instructions into the chat. Once you get into the breakout room, we will also make sure you have the instructions there, but I'm just jotting them down here so that everyone who wants to access the website and the questions early can. And I'll now pass it over to Alex to break us into our groups. See you all in there.
Our group didn't quite get through the questions. Did any group get to the last two questions? What languages is the DQQ available in DRC, and what insects are commonly consumed in Nigeria? Did anyone get to those questions?
Well, we got there with a little help from our guide. Yeah.
I think I got there. I got to the one of DRC. I saw
Okay.
Swahili and French and English.
Great.
Yeah, we didn't get to the last one.
The last one is the trickiest. It might be a piece of information you don't even know is there. So does someone want to take us through how you would find information on insects commonly consumed in Nigeria? I mean, you might not realize it there because it's there because it's not a DQQ food group. So
yeah, I found the grasshoppers. They also eat beetles, and also some termites.
And how did you know that?
I was just reading through some of their research on the insects consumable in Nigeria.
Okay, but you can actually find this information in one of our materials available for each country. Does someone, maybe Christina, do you want to share your screen and show where you can actually see this piece of information? And go ahead and unmute if you can to narrate what you're seeing.
Yep, so if I'm starting at this homepage where we all landed when we clicked on the dietquality.org link, and I'm looking for commonly consumed foods, in this case, insects in Nigeria, my best bet is to go directly to the Nigerian DQQ, the country adopted diet quality questionnaire. I can do that by clicking on tools. And once I scroll past all of the different resources here, I'm going to see a list of countries, 110 countries in total. And I'm going to find Nigeria. Once I click here, I can look at all of the different resources Nigeria has in addition to nationally representative data. I'm going to click on the resources. And as Anna mentioned, insects are not a DQQ food group for the general population. So does anyone have a sense of where I would click to find insects?
So we're going to go to an activity where we will be practicing administering the DQQ, but I will do a very brief introduction to how to administer the DQQ. So the instructions for the DQQ are at the bottom of each DQQ for each country, and they are here. So first, read the DQQ exactly as it's written. Do not include additional dialogue or probing questions. Do not add or remove food items. It is important for the integrity of the questionnaire and comparability of results to not modify the DQQ. Number 2, if you desire to collect information on additional food items or to add supplementary questions, these additional questions can be placed at the end of the questionnaire. And number 3, the Global Diet Quality Project has undertaken a systematic process to identify food items for each food group. If you would like to suggest changes to the DQQ, please contact the team using the Contact Us button on our website, dietquality.org. So you will see that we have an introduction. The purpose of the introduction is to enable the respondent to think about what they ate or drank yesterday. It is important for respondents to be able to understand the questionnaire easily, to have that space to go through what they ate yesterday, and it's not meant to be a dialogue. So the respondent is asked to reflect to themselves about their day and what they ate or drank. The introduction has some pauses that are indicated by the ellipses. These pauses give people time to think. Our brains have difficulty doing more than one thing at once. We can think or we can listen. So the pauses are important to enable the respondent to be fully engaged in listening while also thinking about their day, which is a key part of the process. These strategic pauses are really helpful. So, you know, they say, think about what you ate in the morning. Think about what you may have had for lunch and who you were with. Then think about what you had for dinner. If we breeze through the introduction, it might be a bit of a struggle for people to think and listen at the same time. The pauses should be natural. They should last about 2 to 3 seconds. But if they're too long, the respondent may start to think that the interviewer is expecting them to say something as a response. So don't make the pause too long. So the question should be read aloud. The entire question should be read aloud. For example, yesterday, did you eat any of the following vegetables? Do not pause in the middle of reading the question. Do not ask about each food one by one, and do not cut the question short if the respondent interrupts. And then circle the response in the far right, yes or no. Here we zoom in a little more, and again, read the question exactly as it's written. Yesterday, did you eat any of the following fruits? Papaya, mango, or apricots? And then circle the response accordingly. So sometimes a respondent might interrupt and say, what do you mean by that item? I don't know what ugu is, or maybe there's a food that is not common in a specific region. So our advice in a situation like that is to not try to explain the food item or the food group, because we would lose consistency. So if the respondent does not know what an item is, it's just important to read the question as it is written. And sorry, I'll just read this. The respondent should just respond based on the other items in the question. So just encourage people to respond yes or no. So that's that. It was, again, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Just a quick introduction on how to administer the DQQ. You can find more on the how-to on dietquality.org /tools. You will find all the instructions and training slides there.
Okay, fantastic. And now we're going to move on to the second activity of the day, where we're actually going to have a chance to practice administering the diet quality questionnaire in your countries of choice. So in just a moment, we're going to break into some smaller breakout rooms, around 4 people a group, and we'll practice using the diet quality questionnaire.
We didn't manage to finish the last set.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
And our group 2.
And we observe that the template that we are reporting is not exactly aligned with the question, most especially the questions we use the Nigerian questionnaire, but at some point we're first struggling to align the responses with the questions that we have in the templates.
Yeah, great. So thanks for that observation. The reason is because we're a global group, some of the questionnaires have slightly different number of questions for certain food groups, like dark green leafy vegetables is one, where in some countries it's just 1 question. And in other countries it's 2 questions because one of the principles of the DQQ is that we have short questions. If you have many, many items in 1 question, it gets difficult to answer. So when there are many, many common dark green leafy vegetables, we have to ask 2 different questions to accommodate all of the common food items. So you may have struggled with that. Sorry, we didn't re-emphasize the that if the answer is yes to either one of those 2 dark green leafy vegetable questions, then the whole group is yes. If both answers are no, then the whole group is no. Same thing for other fruits, other vegetables. So I think maybe you were able to, most groups seem like they were able to get the data entered.
Can I quickly ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
What is the difference between DQQ and HDDS and WDDS? Because the template looks almost similar.
So that everybody is aware, HDDS means Household Dietary Diversity Score, and WDDS means Women's Dietary Diversity Score. So this data, first of all, it's not for a household. It is for an individual. You cannot ask these questions for a household. You cannot say, did anyone in the household have any of these items? It's just for 1 individual. So you cannot create a household dietary diversity score unless you collected it for every member of the household and then made your own code to try to put the food groups together. But this is for an individual dietary recall. The Women's Dietary Diversity Score is essentially a count of food groups that are make up the MDDW. MDDW is whether at least 5 or more out of the 10 food groups were consumed. So as I mentioned in the introduction, this data can be used to calculate the MDDW, or the Women's Dietary Diversity Score, which is a count of the number of 10 food groups, also known as the Food Group Diversity Score. Same thing, a count of the 10 food groups that make up the score. So the DQQ is a tool to collect the data needed for the indicator. So we'll see the results of that actually for the room.
I want to ask a question. My hand is raised up.
Go ahead. Yes.
All right. So, so how do you get your audience? How do you, like you're saying, it's not for household, it's for individual. And if I need to get this data from individuals, perhaps they might be from the same household. So how do I get the audience for this? Yeah.
Well, there are many different settings, choosing a representative sample is up to you. This is a tool, this is a survey module that can be used once you've done all of your research planning for choosing a sample, choosing respondents. So you define who your respondents are. This is a tool for the general adult population. Of course, we have the tool for age 6 to 23 months, where you would ask the caregiver about what the infant consumed. For children, it's a little bit tricky because in general, Dietary recall in children is quite challenging. Children aren't able to necessarily report what they consumed, and caregivers aren't necessarily able to report what they consumed. So usually we use this tool for people who can give a recall of their diet. And it's up to you to choose the respondent that you are aiming to cover to understand your population of interest. Maybe it's men, maybe it's women, maybe it's adolescents, maybe it's everybody. So you choose who you want to have answer the questions. And we have another hand raised from Chinwe.
Yes, thank you very much for this. So I've learned a lot of things today. So I want to ask, I'm currently looking at a data set from a demographic and health survey, which didn't use the diet quality questionnaire to collect information. So from the indicators there, I think some of this information can still be found at like the all 5, the 0 vegetable and fruit consumption, but I'm wondering if this can be adapted for things like the NCD Protect and NCD Risk, because the data set has less food groups than is contained in this DQQ. So what's your thought on that, please?
Thank you for the question. Now, I'm not sure exactly which data set you're looking at, and it's okay. We don't need to.
Yeah, it's a Nigerian demographic and health survey.
But it must be from
the 2018.
Okay, so that's a special case. Your question is very, very rare because Nigeria did a pilot and it's different than anywhere else. So nobody else would have that issue from other countries. Now, DHS 8 is collecting a diet module for women for the first time ever. So back in 2008, it was, I think, only Nigeria did a pilot and no other place. So now it's covered in the DHS, but the data are not available yet. When they become available, you're absolutely right. The food groups will not be exactly the same. The DHS does use the same adapted questions where the food groups are the same, but it does not cover, the DHS does not cover all the food groups that are covered in the DQQ. The reason for that is that things change very slowly in DHS. They have a mandate to collect data for the MDDW indicator. Beyond that, they don't have a mandate to cover other indicators. And the NCD Protect and NCD Risk are indicators that were developed after DHS made the decision of covering MDDW only. So you will not be able to calculate the NCD Risk and NCD Protect from the DHS data. You can calculate MDDW. And as you said, you can calculate also all 5 and some of the indicators under the food groups that are covered. There could be, I think it's important if there's a demand for the NCD Risk and NCD Protect indicators, it's important to if you're engaged with DHS, to also communicate that because things may be able to change in the future if there's demand for these indicators as well. Thanks. And we have.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chinwe. 3 other hands raised. I think we have time for these while we're working on uploading your data. So I see Ria first on the screen.
Hi, good evening from the Philippines. I would like to ask, how do you interpret the results of the tool, the DQQ? And then how do you aggregate the results from a sample? Thank you.
Let's answer that question actually all together. We will, you've all entered your data from the interviews you did, and we're actually going to show exactly how you look at the results. Is that you screen sharing, Christina? Did you want to say something about that?
Exactly, yes. So I'm just looking at all your fantastic results from the DQQs that you administered. And I'm going to take this exact same template that you have inputted your answers into, and I'm just going to download it as a CSV file. I'm doing this because the indicator calculator on dietquality.org uses this CSV template to give us results for the group in which we're collecting data. So now I've downloaded it. I can see it in my downloads. It's a CSV. What I'm going to do next is go back to dietquality.org, start from the homepage here.
I think sorry to interrupt, but I think you might have to actually get rid of the empty rows that weren't filled out and all of that for to have a clean data set before we upload it.
Yes, I was trying to get rid of most of them just now when we were doing the Q&A. It will work. It will just show a little bit lower of consumption in some food groups. Do you want to try it with what we have, Anna, or should we go back and delete some of the empty rows?
Why don't we just pause on it, and why don't you make sure that it'll work so that for reasons of time, and we will go through all of the results in detail. Let's get to the couple other hands that were raised before we answer fully the question that Ria raised. So we have, while you check on that, Christina, I think we have Biola.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Biola from Zimbabwe. When we're going through the tool, at some point we're asking ourselves what quantity is enough. Are there any minimum quantities that we're looking at on the consumption? Is the teaspoon enough? How much of that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So basically, you don't need to worry about it. It's not something that we probe for. That's not part of the question. You know, the questions are just read as is. And so if the person remembers something that they ate that was in the question, then they would say yes. And we know that it's not a perfect measure. Like, for example, in the validation study, what we noticed is that carrots in particular were a food that for some reason, you know, people remembered and they reported and they said yes. But when in the validation, when we compared it to quantitative data, often people were eating carrots in small amounts as an ingredient in a stew or something. So there's some error in that, but it's because we're not collecting quantitative intake data. It's just a level of error that we sort of have to live with in food group based indicators. Now, I will say that we've done a lot of work to weed out those most common cases. Like you saw in the beginning, you know, we don't generally include parsley as a green vegetable so that people will not report it because it's usually eaten in small amounts. Similarly, we do not ask people to report if they had lemon because it's usually eaten in small amounts as a flavor. So in a lot of cases, we've already dealt with that issue of foods that are eaten in small quantities. Some may slip in, and that's just something we have to live with. So we'll take one more question and then go to the results. We have Rahim.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. I just want to validate the response you gave earlier. So if someone is looking, let's say I'm targeting dietary distribution among youth specifically, not household now, I think it's better for me to use the QDD rather than using the HDDS because it's individual that I'm asking question about. Do you get the question I'm asking? So
yeah, thank you. So I want to re-emphasize the DQQ, Diet Quality Questionnaire, is a tool. It's a tool for collecting data. The HDDS, the MDDW, all these are indicators. So there's a difference between tools and indicators, right? Because the tool is a questionnaire that you use to collect data. From that data, you calculate indicators.
So can I use this to the result from DQQ to do HDDS?
It's not you can't ask the questionnaire at household level. The HDDS is really an indicator of food access. It's, you know, there's no such thing as a household diet. There's only such a thing as an individual diet.
Yeah. And
so I would encourage you to look in other ways of looking at food access. Maybe there's, I think the HDDS is often less commonly used, may require a different tool. But for this tool, you can calculate indicators of individual diets and you could average them across households. But again, the indicators are used for population level. So at the end of the day, you'd want the population level average of these individual diet quality indicators.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's hold on other questions. Thanks so much, Christina, for making sure that the data entry works, the data file works after the entry we did. And let's look at the results from this group.
Okay. All right. And thanks everyone again for administering the DQQs in your groups and giving us these results to work with. So what I've done at this point is I've taken this sheet and I've downloaded it as a CSV, just as is. And I'm going to the dietquality.org website where I'll go to the tools page. And here I'm immediately going to see different resources for the DQQs. One of them being this indicator calculator here. This is a calculator that automatically generates some of these indicators that Anna has gone over, which can be measured by the DQQ. Now, here in this CSV upload, you'll see there's an option to download the template. This will give you this template that we looked at just now. And you can fill it in yourself, use kind of an example data set if you want to practice. We already have a great data set from our group here. So I'm going to upload what we have. Great. And all I do is click Calculate Indicators. Anna, do you want to take us through these?
Yeah, sure. So what we can see here with the bar chart, these are our results. You can try clicking gender disaggregated. I'm not sure if everyone filled out gender. Yeah, enough people did that we can see the results. They're disaggregated by gender as well. Any differences? It looks like perhaps the blue bars are what? I have to look at the key above to see.
Female, dark blue female,
okay,
and light blue male.
Yeah, so it looks like there is, sorry, could you go back up to the top again? Thanks. So it looks like there may be a difference, a significant difference between females and males in this group in terms of pulses, nuts, or seeds, with the females consuming a higher amount. The other differences look like they're probably not significantly different. But if we just look at the aggregate results, also you can see the MDDW is only calculated for females because it's been validated for women age 15 to 49. So if we just look at the aggregated results, we can see about 38% had all 5 food groups. That's actually pretty normal for what we see across a lot of countries, is that a lot of people are not consuming all 5 of the food groups typically recommended. We have lower consumption of fruits, pulses, nuts, and seeds than the other food groups. And we have 65% of the sample of women who met the MDDW. On average, in this group, we have 5 out of the 10 food groups that were consumed in the food group diversity score. Quite a low percentage who had 0 fruits and vegetables, which is, there is an indicator that's aligned with IYCF indicators that have been published by WHO and UNICEF, but it's, vegetables and fruits are universally recommended for daily consumption. So, it's an indicator where if people have consumed 0, it's quite, an area that needs more advocacy and work to increase availability and access to these foods and also consumption. Several other of the food groups are highlighted here. We have fairly low, if we go down to indicator 8 on this screen, fairly low processed meat consumption. That's an indicator because it's identified as a class 1 carcinogen by the WHO International Agency on Research on Cancer, and therefore not recommended in a healthy diet. We have about half having sweet foods. That's an indicator aligned with infants and young children as well, and a lower percent consuming soft drinks. So this is a display of, some of the indicators. If you go down to the bottom of the screen again and you see the download results, you'll actually get a lot more of it will display all of the indicators, not just the 12 that we see here. So you can get the full data set downloaded from your population. And this is just to show you how, you can collect this data in a population. Here we had, I think this represents, 21 people of the group. And so, if you were using this questionnaire in a population, once you have the data, you can upload it here and immediately see the indicators calculated. Yeah, thanks. So you can also, another option is to download the R scripts if you use R, that you can use the R script on your own computer to calculate the indicators, and it uses the same template as what's been provided. So that is there to make it easier for the results to be quickly analyzed, so people don't have to reinvent the wheel to, everyone write their own code to produce the same indicators. It's already there. So I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions, and then we had a feedback exercise at the very end in the last 10 minutes. I think Mina K had a hand up. I don't know if you still have your question and want to ask. Let's go ahead with Aisha.
Hi, sorry to bring you back. Maybe you talked about this in the beginning, but I just wanted to have a sense of like the population from these countries where you collected the data. Was it a population-wide survey that was implemented, or just to some districts?
Yeah, the data that we have on the site was implemented in nationally representative surveys of all of the countries shown. And those surveys were done by the Gallup World Poll, which does a sample of, they have their sampling framework to select a nationally representative sample, and they ask many different kinds of questions on well-being to the sample. So it's not just this questionnaire, this is one of many. Also, the Food Insecurity Experience Scale is administered within the Gallup World Poll. And so in most countries, it's 1,000 people every year. In some countries, it's larger if it's a larger population. But the data are nationally representative. And if you were doing this in your own research, you would need to do some sample size power calculations to determine an appropriate sample size for looking at, if you wanted to look at differences across populations, to do those calculations on what sample size you need for your research. Thanks. I see a question concerning the analysis. Do you have to upload R software? No, you don't need to use R software. If you already use R, the script is provided, but as we just saw, you can just use Excel and enter the data and then upload it right onto the site, and the indicators are automatically calculated. So you do not need R or any other particular software.
I think we could go to the next activity, the Menti feedback. Or is there a good?
I might just want to do a really quick overview because we didn't actually do a tour of the whole website, but I just want to make sure that everyone sort of knows in general what's there. So really quickly, we just have, the three, you've practiced using the tools section, you practiced using the data section, explore by country. I want you to also, know that quickly you can use the indicator calculator available through the tools section. There's also an indicator guide here that shows you how the indicators are calculated. You can see exactly which food groups go into each indicator. Also, those slides that Cecilia went through on how to use the diet quality questionnaire are here in the tool section. The slideshow is here. you can download it and use it for training enumerators or reading through yourself. This section has the food group definitions, which foods belong in each food group. This is not, this is background reading because all the foods are already classified into the questions. So it's not something you have to do, but if you want to understand what goes into the food groups, this is the definition. Similarly, the adaptation methods are described. There's no adaptation needed. It's already complete with the help of many, many people. But if you want to read about how it was done, that's here in this section as well. And we also have the reports and publications page where you can get these further resources, including some country profiles. More will be coming. We also have an events and media page. And this website was launched last week. Actually, I think Chris might be able to share the link to the recording of that if anyone wants to watch the whole presentation of the website and how it works. But we have done many of the aspects. We've practiced with many of the aspects already here today. So before we did the final feedback, I just wanted to make sure everyone has that overview and knows how to use each part of the tools that are available. Also, if you want to ask further questions, you can, there's a contact us button on the webpage. You can email info@dietquality.org and contact us that way. And thanks for the links there, Cecilia and Chris. So let's maybe move to the last feedback section.
Yes, let's do it. So we have about 6 minutes left, and we'll use those to just reflect together a little bit on what we did today, how it might be useful for you all. We also want to learn about that, and just sort of hear what parts of the different tools and resources we've shared are going to come in handy in the work that you all are driving today. So I'm going to share my screen here, and Alex, let me know when you see it. To join the Menti, you can scan the QR code that you see here if you want to use your phone, or if you're on your computer, feel free to just click the link I put into the chat, or do it by going to menti.com and entering the code you see there. So first question is asking if there was anything we covered today that was relevant for your own work. Don't hesitate to say no or that you don't know. This is also good information for us. So
somebody mentioned social desirability bias. So if you didn't find it useful, feel free to say.
This is anonymous. Yes. Okay. Well, it does seem like a lot of you did find it useful. So that's good feedback for us. And if you did find it useful, let us know what insights, learnings, sort of discoveries from today were maybe the most interesting or novel for you all. Use of the tool and interpretation. Session was practical, learned how to use the tool for the first time. Music to our ears, that's great. The indicator calculator, yes.
On the comment on using the DQQ to get the score for an individual, I want to comment and emphasize again that the data are collected for individuals and not households, but for the analysis, that the data are used to get the scores for a population. Because just in any 24-hour recall information, you're really getting just a snapshot of one day, in a person, which isn't representative of the whole diet quality of an individual. So it can't really be used for counseling or clinical use for an individual. But when you get a whole sample of a population, so you've got 1,000 yesterdays of the population, you do get a representation of the normal diet of a country or a population. So
indeed. And with just a couple of minutes left, we just have a few more questions. Wondering which indicators you found crucial to understanding diet quality in populations. Yeah, food group diversity score. All 5. So seeing fans of the MDDW, which is great because the diet quality tool was designed to measure the MDDW indicator. And then just in the interest of time here, we can move to the next question. We wanted to know what you found the most useful for your work out of all of the resources that we shared today. Great to see that, yeah, the data and the calculator were useful. I'm just gonna stop sharing so that we can do closing remarks. I know we're already running a little bit over.
Thank you everyone for joining today. It's a pleasure to share out these tools so that people know they exist. You know, it's come from a lot of input, huge global effort from collaborators around the world. And so at this point, we're just, you know, sharing and celebrating that they're here for your use so that there's the ability to easily collect harmonized and useful diet data quickly. Of course, there are many other data collection methods. If you need quantitative diet data, you know, this tool doesn't give you everything you might ever need to know. Depends on what your research questions are. And if you need quantitative data on micronutrients or energy consumption, dietary energy consumption, there, you know, you still have the availability of quantitative 24-hour recalls and other tools in research, but this tool is something that can be used for rapid assessment and monitoring and may come in handy in some of your work or your engagements with stakeholders in places where you work. So thank you so much for joining and for participating in all of the great questions that you brought. If you have other questions, feel free to reach out to us.